Can you really build your own bank? Stay tuned. Well, welcome back to NoteSchool TV. We are here every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time, so feel free to join us. Make sure that you're checking out some of the content that we're publishing, and also if this content that you're listening to is valuable to you, we would love for you to go and like these videos, right? It means a lot to us. It would be great value to you as well to subscribe to the channel to learn a little bit more about some of the content that we're pushing out, and specifically for NoteSchool TV that we do live every Wednesday. You have to click the notification bell on the YouTube page in order to be notified that we're going live. That way, you know that you can jump on, hear what we have to say. Feel free to comment, chat a little bit, engage a little bit, and even stick around, because after the NoteSchool TV show, we even do an after party where we hang out afterwards and just shoot the breeze, talk about some of the comments that have come into the chat box, answer questions, allow you to engage a little bit more with maybe some of the guests that we've got. For those of you who are brand new to Notes, you're brand new to NoteSchool, and you're just trying to figure out maybe even what this is all about, and you want to learn a little bit more, feel free to go to noteschool.com/TV to learn a little bit more, even get some free ebooks, and kind of dig a little bit more into some of the content that we're teaching, and take that next step. This week, we've got a very special guest. He is, well, you'll see, he is from the NoteSchool family. And so we're going to kind of get into that. But before we bring him on, I got to bring on Joe so we can talk about today's latest news.
My friend.
Hey, what's the happy hap?
Well, it's just going on. And for everybody on the show today, the big news is that Brian turned 36 yesterday.
So happy birthday. Thank you.
Did the fam have a big party for you?
No, I'm more of a low-key guy, you know. So went and had lunch with a friend. So yeah.
Well, happy birthday. And for those of that, Eddie is not with us today, everybody. And this is news as well, right, Brian? So Eddie is a Mr. and Mrs. Speed. Eddie and Martha are grandparents for the second time. Their son Wood and his wife Tessa had a 7-pound, 7-ounce baby boy yesterday. His name is Levi. Right? Levi Speed. So that is number 2, Colt and Levi. So that's great news as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of good things happening.
A lot of great things, man. And spring is almost here. So that's good as well. So let's talk about the news, Brian, and what's going on. So pull this article from the Atlantic magazine written by a young man by the name of Derek Thompson. And he says, this is unprecedented. That's that word. It kind of, it's like nails on a chalkboard, right? Unprecedented. Why America's housing market has never been weirder, right? So it starts off and says, if you think the U.S. housing market is behaving very, very strangely these days, that probably means you're paying attention. In almost any other year, a weak economy would cripple housing, but the flash freeze recession of 2020 corresponded with the real estate boom led by high-end purchases. So even stranger, in America's big metros, home prices are going up, rent prices are going down, right? And that is strange stuff, right? Home prices are up, for instance, in San Francisco, some 14%, while rent prices fell 7%, which is the 6th largest decline in this survey. So what does it mean? Well, home prices up, rent prices down, more tired landlords, right? So more tired landlords means more opportunities with tired landlords wanting to sell those subject to, so that we can wrap them to new homeowners and create more inventory out there. So guys, if that looks a little bit out of focus, that's really what the home market looks like today, right? Just a little out of focus. So here's what we know. Housing shortage, right? Largest housing shortage ever. Lack of new construction, right? They're building, but we've the recession in 2000, the Great Recession, housing was overbuilt, and then nobody was building houses, so we've created this big lack of new construction. Lumber prices, reading yesterday, up 180% year over year. Lumber prices. They're working on that. They're trying to get some new lumber yards online, but stay tuned. Average price of a new house is $325,000 or so dollars, which means the average new house, it adds about $24,000 to the average new house. So prices are through the roof. Interest rates just ticked up over 3%. Age 30 to 39, millennials. This age group is the largest number of 30 to 39-year-olds in history, and they historically start buying houses about age 31. Here's my question, guys. What's the person to do, right? And hot off the presses here as well, just coming up this morning, home asking and selling prices hit a new high. The median sale price of a home increased 16% year over year to $326, an all-time high and the largest increase on record. Home sale prices hit all-time benchmark. Asking prices of newly listed homes hit an all-time high as well, $347,475, which is up 10% over 2020. This is pretty shocking. The number of homes listed for sale at any point fell 40% from 2020 to a record all-time low. Of course, high prices and all that. Houses are selling, 55% of sales are flying off the shelves and going under contract and closing in 2 weeks. So amazing stuff. Now, I want to share this with you guys real quick, because this is something that our guest today, right, is going to kind of allude to, is what he does in the how he draws in private capital. So, guys, what this is saying is that this is the biggest pile of cash ever, right? So the last time the cash hoard, and this is just in money market accounts, guys, not in self-directed IRAs, just in money market accounts, was 2008 during the Great Recession, right? Stock market refugees. That was about 3.8 trillion. Guys, we're talking trillion, not billion. Today, we're at about $4.8 trillion. Okay? That is a lot of cash looking for a home. We know that there's $55 to $75 billion sitting idle in self-directed IRAs. So, guys, that is the news as we see it today, and we're going to tie this big pile of cash in just a minute. All right. So, Brian.
And one of the things I would say too, for those of you who are with us right now, if you're somebody who's wanting to raise capital or you're struggling to raise capital, make sure you're typing this in the chat box. Drop some comments so that we can talk about it in the after party and kind of see if we can address some of the issues that you're having. Because after you learn from our special guest Ben here, I think you're going to see there's a pretty interesting opportunity, knowing there's $4.8 trillion out there. What can we do to not only help these people invest this money in a solid return with a little lower risk attached to real estate, but also be able to generate some wealth for ourselves? So, are you ready to bring on our guest here, Jim?
Let's do it. So, Mr. Ben Haught, right? Ben is the owner of or managing director and partner of the MD, right? The MD, Hammelmyer Investment Group. He is, a lot of you, if you have met Ben through NoteSchool, he's been with NoteSchool for a long time, and he is building his own little bank, a deal or two or 10 at a time. Right, Ben? How you doing?
That's it. Doing great. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about this.
Yeah, this is an amazing thing. Ben's going to jump on here, and he's going to tell his story as we go through this. Kind of how going to tell us how he started Hammelmyer and the relevance of what that looks like. So Ben, why don't we get to it? I'm going to bring up the slides here, and I'm going to let you and I are just going to have a little conversation, right?
All right.
You know, Ben, it's kind of like Elvis says, right? A little less conversation and a lot more action, right?
That's right. Yeah.
All
That,
right, let me get there.
that song was played many a time in my household growing up. So, yeah.
So, Ben, tell us a little bit about, your vision when with Hammelmyer, and what prompted you to jump into that, right?
Sure. Well, I will tell you the original inception, what Hammelmyer looked like before it really became what it looks like today, was different, similar but different. And the original intent behind it was just to kind of say, I went into the doctor, as you know, a family doctor who I've known for years, and they had said, what are you into? And just kind of started talking about the business, talking about what's going on. And I found that he was heavy into, had a big rental portfolio. And he was one of many doctors that were in the same building. And I just happened to talk to him about that day. He was saying about notes that day, and he was saying how he wanted to kind of use his retirement money. And he was about 8 years away from retiring. And he's like, man, I just, all the different things that you hear, stock market and, burnout landlords and all that stuff was there. And I forget how I worded it. And for the life of me, I've tried to remember, but it was something to the effect of, he said, well, Ben, what is it that you really do? And I said, well, Doc, I work with people like you who want cash flow without the headaches, or something, again, very similar to that. And that's what hooked him. And he was like, well, what do you mean by that? And so during that conversation, I found, rentals. He was heavy into it, as with most of the investors that I've spoken with, and rehabs, the traditional things that you hear. Yeah. And I was like, well, what is it? Why are you involved with that? Why was that part of the portfolio? And that's really what started setting up and engaging the conversation. And one of the earliest things I can remember is saying how, it's kind of funny. You and I have spoken before, Joe. And, people are a lot more alike than what they realize.
Right.
And it was funny because you take all different backgrounds, all different types of people, they all kind of wanted the same thing, as we all do, I'm sure. And that's just kind of what set everything up. And since then, we've had 3 iteration or reiterations, kind of what I call updates would be a more accurate description. Just based off of, where we were and kind of how we morphed. Without sounding like it just grew faster than what I thought it was going to be. And that's really what happened. And so what started off was supposed to be very small, just a small group of us of about 4 or 5. And then they started talking to their friends and their friends. And before you know it, it blew up into what kind of the phase that we're into nowadays. So that's kind of a background and a very 3.5 years and actually 4.5 years into a couple minutes.
But Ben, it started with a conversation, right?
That's right.
It started with the conversation, and there has never been a better time to catch up with people that you haven't talked to in a year in person, right? Than right now. And it's just that, hey, how you doing? What have you been up to them? And then what are they going to say to you? So what have you been up to, right? Yeah. And that opens the door many times. So Ben, this business model, you had some major requirements that this business model was not going to be another job. You're very busy with your boys in baseball and your daughter in drama and all of that. So you work with NoteSchool as well. And so let's just talk about this, for a second here about what you wanted your model to look like, right?
Sure. And to that point, Joe, that's exactly a big reason of why it looks like what it like. I did not have the time, quite frankly. For those of you who may not know, but I have 3 kids, 2 of which are year-round competitive travel baseball. Mm-hmm. And so we're on a field. That's a part-time job in and of itself. And we're on a field somewhere about 10 to 12 hours a week, not including the weekend tournaments between coaches. I mean, so they're still relatively young, 13 and 10 now. And so that I remembered the whole point of getting involved into investing was to, spend more time with them, not take that time away. So now,
not less, but more. And this is what it looked like, right?
That's exactly what it looks like. So kind of what you're seeing there, that was my requirements, and it kind of being semi-sarcastic, but in the way it's presented. But this is it. I told them, listen, if we're going to do this, we're only going to be open for business up to 10 hours a month. And that's a month. It's not a typo. And so I went the route. It's funny. I'm going to touch on the rejecting 80 to 90% of the potential clientele. So the reason why I did that was kind of a let's see what happens moment. And as I read a lot, Joe, and I read something where the scarcity, it's like here's a scarcity model. And if you make it where, people don't want, then something, whatever it was. Right. Well, at the time I said, you know what I'm going to do? I wanted it to be, the intent behind it was to be very selective with who I was working with.
You want to do business with people you like and respect.
Yeah. And I had, we're going back to 2005, 2006, where I had a very brief stint in what I would call wholesaling in the traditional model that people would know it as.
Right.
And I remember back, man, it was just you're wheeling and dealing, and just the work behind, and that's what I did not want it to become. And then there were some people where you work with, and sometimes, I'm sure we've all had it where it just wasn't worth the money dealing with, either the fallout or dealing with whatever it may be. It was just, it just wasn't worth it. So I started that in the back of my head and in my mind. I was like, I'm going to see what a scarcity model would look like in this. And so I made it to where I was after a very specific person. And what that specific person was someone who didn't know it all, that wasn't going to argue with me, that just wasn't going to create a lot of tension, just someone with a good head on their shoulders, that was open to the idea of seeing what I could do for them. Right.
That's right.
And I found, and it was really interesting, where the conversations, just to kind of finish real quick, limited to 2 to 3 hours for customer service. Because again, I said, and most of that was, hey, listen, if you don't mind, we're going to be on a ball field, so I can kind of do it. And what's interesting is nobody really cared. They didn't really, it wasn't a pushback of any sort. No, everybody was very understanding. The issue that we had was, I'm open when they're at work, and in the afternoon when they can talk, I'm busy. So there was that dichotomy. So the fix that we came up with that was, listen, if you don't mind noise in the background, I can talk. I can, they just want me there to see them anyway. They meaning the boys. And had a zero marketing budget because it was all word of mouth. And 3.5 years, we turned 3 years in November 17th last year, and I have not spent a dime on marketing, and still continue. We just don't need it, but it's based off of that 80 to 90% rejection rate. Which is funny, because I said, listen, we're after a very specific type of person, and I found that the more I held to my guns, and I was like, I'm not willing to bend on that, the more what's a good word?
Well, the more exclusive it became, and the more they wanted in.
Yeah, it was very like they were like, no, I really want to do this. I really want to, and I was like, well, you're going to have to fall in line. And I'm kind of tongue in cheek here, but they did, man, and it just kind of grew from there. And then I found that they were saying, well, one person said they may have 100,000, right? No, well, I have 150, and this other person, I have 250. I said, it's not the amount. I'm after the person. And there was one point where a guy came in and tried to kind of, be Mr. Big Dog. And he's like, I have $3 million that I could throw. And when I rejected him, the rest of them were like, that's a explosion that happened in my brain. I was like, you know what? That's what I'm doing. I'm after the people, after the person. That's who I want. Right. And because they were all in the same building, it became very easy. And that particular, they kind of weeded themselves out. They're like, no, man, you're not up to par, or you're not. So they started doing all screening for me. So it was great.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the beginnings of it.
Right. So then this is you in the middle here, right? You're this deal architect, and you have source of notes through Notes Direct and through some marketing and some other entities or other companies that you can buy through. And your passive investors, they were burnout landlords, they were stock market refugees or money market refugees and mutual fund refugees. They just happen to be dentists, right?
Yeah.
And so you just melded those two together, right? So, and that's what it looked like.
Yep. Yeah. I never had to take ownership. In fact, I was very particular about explaining to them that the money that they sent, it never came to me. It goes to a third party. It goes there, and that was very intriguing. They loved that, and it made it where it was a little bit more expedient in the sense of they were like, "Wait, you're not taking my money?" And I was like, "No, it's never. It goes directly to the source, and that's what you're doing." And they were very comfortable with that. Started jumping on board.
So Ben, what you did is what Justin Bogart was on last week. Yeah. Justin did it one deal at a time. You put a group of investors together so you could do 5, 10, 20 deals at a time, right? And that's right. Kind of what it looked like, right? So, and we need to move through these pretty quickly. So, sure. But this is what they were investing in, right?
That's it. Yeah. Typical real estate sources, stock market, some type of thing where Ginnie and Treasury and ETF. And it's funny, one of the biggest kickers was that Vanguard high yield bonds. I asked the question, well, what is it minus the fees? What's the truth? And you would have thought I asked some unreal, well, what do you mean minus fees? I'm like, well, there's fees involved. And then that opened the floodgates, man. That one thing right there. But that was their go-to. They were, I'm kind of, again, teasing a little bit, but Vanguard high yield bonds at 5.84% at that time, they were it. And they said, man, you can't beat this. I was like, yes, we can actually. So
that's great. Yeah. And that's what it's after the fees, right? It's the net.
So, it drops down significantly.
Yeah. So they were looking, and let's just talk about this real quick. So you did, the process, what are they investing in? And then what did they want, Ben? Right?
Yeah, they wanted what all of us want, cash flow. They don't want to do anything. They want to spend little money, get the highest return. It's the Christmas wish list is what I call it.
Right.
And it's what everybody wants. You want as little money in as most money back without having to do anything, right? The easy button. Remember that commercial? That's the what
easy button. Yeah, but I used to have one of those. I think I still do somewhere around here.
I have one somewhere around here. I think it's in a drawer somewhere, but yeah, it's great. But it was really the point of that was really to get them over that new factor. What I mean by that is most people aren't aware of how close notes are with traditional real estate. It's right. Very, very close. It's not some new, completely distant thing. It's very close. And so I wanted something that kind of showed a commonality. That was like, listen, you have rentals. Oh, so why'd you get that? Oh, it was because of the cash flow. Well, here's how notes kind of do the same thing. And so one of the very first deals that we did, he had, the criteria was that he wanted $3,000 to $4,000 of income coming in a month, up to $500,000 to spend. And he didn't want to do anything like most of them want to. And so I knew that based off of the historical aspect, it was going to build a relationship. And so the first deal, I wanted to meet his criteria and exceed, again, because the zero marketing budget kind of came in. I was like, I don't want to have to dump a whole lot of money into something with a whole lot of uncertainty of what we're going to really do with it, right? Because Hammelmyer wasn't in the picture yet, but this is what kind of set the stage for it. And so I just went out there and knowing the figures, because I had done a few deals, and just kind of been involved with it, I knew I could hit those numbers that he wanted. And what you're seeing on screen is those first, we did a deal where we had 5 performing and 2 non-performing. And those are the pictures of the houses that were there. Bread and butter America, right there in the middle. Those are the numbers there. When you run it, we were, the payment there on the second end column, that's what they were receiving a month. Yeah. The investor price is what they paid for it. The broker fee is what I made. Essentially, when it was all said and done, he had up to $500,000, but he only had to spend 341. I rounded. It was 349 and change. And I made about 20 grand out of it. And the payments, I mean, it was almost dead center. It's $34.50 a month once you take away the 2 non-performing loans. And so here's the kicker. The kicker of it is that, those are the numbers: 340, 905 total invested, 34.54 a month coming in, and I made 20 grand and change. And the 2 non-performing, he had a rehab business, right. And he was like, man, so I introduced him to that, and he ended up only having to spend about $250 in the whole grand scheme of things. So
Ben, this number right here, right?
Yep.
This is one transaction, right? So you had upfront money, right? You had $20,000 in upfront money.
Yep.
And so your investor was happy because you put this together, right?
Yeah.
And then you talk about, this is just some things here. Let's get to the, you had a 10% management fee, and
right.
then 10% of the profits, right?
That's right.
And here, and let's get through that, and I love that. Remember this. What I'm trying to get to, Ben, is
how we structure it.
I didn't get to the things there, but you can kind of tell us that. I guess we kind of lost something there. But anyway, so tell us exactly then. So this is a typical transaction. You've got money now, and then you've got money later, right?
That's correct. Yep. And so this is kind of where it really went faster than what I thought it was going to do. But basically, what they do now is, so that there's the idea behind what Hammelmyer is that there's a 10% management fee up front. And the reason why I asked for that was because they have rentals. And so I just asked for 10% of the management. But I knew that I could beat the numbers that they were, without sounding like it sounds, I knew I could beat those numbers. And so I was like, well, listen, if you don't mind paying 10% to help keep me going with it and to keep rolling, then just give me 10% of the profits on the back end. And they agreed unanimously. I mean, there wasn't even a question about it. There's about 8 of them at the time. And we started going through it, and that's what we did. So we end up, whatever they spend on a note, just for numbers wise, if they were to spend $100,000 on a note, technically they're writing a check for 10 grand to an operational account. So it's 110 total, but there's 2 checks, 100 grand and then 10 grand, which is 10% to me in an operational account. And then whatever money that makes, say that 100 grand we had $1,000 profit, I get $100. But if that 100,000 turned into $1 million, I get 100 grand. So it's whatever the profit comes in. The way we have it structured, at the beginning we had it where it was monthly, but the CPA had he was like, man, can you give me it? Because just because they pay on the 1st, they may pay on the 4th, and so I was like, well, just pay it quarterly. It's what's the difference between 3 months or 1 month? And so as it stands right now, every quarter you get a little payment today, and then whatever that money generates later downfield, we get 10% of that too.
So Ben, what you're saying here is, so up front you made $20,000, which was now money. And on this particular transaction, you would say, okay, it's generating, you get 10% of that income, right? So 34.54 times 12 is 41,448. You get 10% of that on a yearly basis. So people will go, well, that's 41.48, but if we did, this every month, then that's stacking on top, on top, on top. So you have this money, and then you have this money. And if you did that 10 times a year, it's like the federal government said, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Now I think it's $1 trillion. That comes into a little bit of money. So Ben, let's just kind of wrap it up and just kind of talk about that's a beautiful model, right?
It works for me.
Yeah. And it works for your guys, right? I mean, they're just, we always think of, like a group of dentists or whatever. Well, they've got it all going on. They're just like everybody else, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just looking for a great, safe investment. And this is what it ends up being.
Yeah.
So Brian, why don't you come back on and let's wrap this up, and then we'll go to the after party after we do this. And more questions for Ben, we can spend some time doing that. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really important for a lot of people to take away is that Ben is basically using his specialized knowledge, what he knows, to be able to provide a service and not just generate a full-time income doing it on a part-time basis, but also keeping cash flow coming in and then these kind of bonus checks for the future. And so he's kind of double dipping or even triple dipping, all because of the knowledge piece, right? You can be the guy that goes out and does, or you can be the guy that knows what to do. And you got, what'd you say, $4.8 trillion. That's a pool of money to essentially raise capital from.
A lot of money, a lot of burnout landlord capital there, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And Ben, kind of as a closing thing with this, I mean, and this is just one group that just continually does this, and you can do as many of these different groups as you want to do, right? It's just not limited to this one. This one is very profitable, but it's a duplicatable process. Brian, why don't we do this? Why don't you take us to Feeding Frenzy Friday?
Let's do it. Well, Note School TV is sponsored by Notes Direct and Feeding Frenzy Friday. Feeding Frenzy Friday is a playlist that we have that you can go to our YouTube channel and check out, where we break down notes from Notes Direct to help you better understand the note business as well as master your due diligence and be able to kind of figure out, hey, what's a great note? What's a bad note based on your preferences and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a great place to kind of get involved. And it's a great video playlist, as you can go see right there, to kind of learn a little bit more about how to become a master note investor. Next week, we've got a fantastic guest, the one and the only Mrs. Martha Speed. She's going to be joining us and talking about actually using that same burnout landlord capital, that massive amount of capital, to be able to grow some serious legacy wealth, right? Hopefully you got a lot out of today. We're going to be sticking around for an after party, but if this was of value, please like and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot for us, and it'll bring you the latest content as we're pushing it out. And if you really want the latest content, click that notification bell, and you'll be notified every time we post a video, as well as every single time we go live. So you can jump on here, engage with us a little bit, bring your questions, and definitely stick around for the after party. If you are somebody who's trying to figure out what that next step is for you, I would encourage you to go to noteschool.com/TV to learn a little bit more about who we are at Note School, what we teach, and kind of how you can get involved. And if you're somebody who you need help right now, there's this burning desire to succeed in real estate, there's a problem in your business you need solved, or you just maybe have some very specific situation needs that you need addressed, go to noteschool.com and simply click that contact us button and get in touch with us, and we'll be reaching out to you. And then lastly, I would say, if this is a great show for you, you enjoy Note School TV and you want to check out past episodes, I'm going to put up a link right now to where you can go and check out some of the past episodes we've done and learn a little bit more. For those of you who can stick around, hang out with us at the after party coming up. Otherwise, we'll see the rest of you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. We'll see you on the other side. Well, one of the questions that pops up right now, welcome to the after party, is where's all this, private party conversation going to happen? And guess what? It's going to be right here. So just hang tight as we kind of dig into it. I would love to know, first of all, thanks, Ben, so much for coming on today. It definitely means a lot. I would love to hear from some people about really what some of their private capital needs are, or really even what some of the goals they have for their business moving forward. And while some of those are coming up, Ben, I want to talk a little bit more about maybe some of the challenges that you've had, maybe some of the best advice you have for people who are starting out, who want to kind of succeed with this model. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Well, I can tell you the biggest thing I would say is learning the art of the talk off. It's what Eddie would call the art of the talk off. It's what I call, or I think it's mainly known as framing. One of the things that I learned early on was, and the reason why I asked, what are you involved with, was rentals. well, why? And when you dig into what the why, they want it for cash flow. So that at that point, it's just framing it to like, here's how you have a better outlet, and kind of answering it that way, rather than, I, as you know, I'm not one to kind of argue over it, which is kind of going back to looking for that very specific person. And it was just kind of like, hey, listen, here's the facts. If you run your numbers and you run these numbers, which one's better? And I let them come to their own conclusion. If they do, great. If they don't,
I was arguing, Ben, with one of my mentors years ago, and he said, listen, call me Joey. He said, listen, Joey, you can be right or you can be rich, but you got to choose.
That's right.
Right. And I shut up and I didn't argue anymore. But Ben, so that is that part of that talk off again is, so you're investing in this and it's earning this, and it can be volatile, right? I mean, we can't argue stock market is, good. Housing market is good, but there's two sides to that, right? Yep. But you just, you were looking for these folks, and they were looking to be, they just wanted to be the bank, right? And just talk a minute about that whole bank thing. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yep. And that's kind of alluding to, kind of tying the two thoughts together. That's what I was going for. It's like, so they wanted the rentals, but they were burnout. I mean, you want to talk about burnout landlords. Once you get about two or three, those of us who have had more than a few rentals, we know that the headaches are eventual. I've heard somebody say, hey, I have 2 rentals and they're great. I'm like, well, get some more underneath your belt and we'll see what happens. But having that conversation with them and just taking it, here's the rentals. And it's really where the note versus rental idea came from, and it's just saying, run your numbers. I hear what you're saying, because I've heard that too, but here's another way of looking at it to get you what you're really after, which was that cash flow with limited effort and less headaches.
Passive income. That's what they were looking for. Right?
Absolutely.
If you only know the bricks and mortar side, the real estate side of the business, that's the natural way to get it. If you don't know the note side, Brian?
I was going to tie into what you mentioned about the talk off, and I'm curious, when you're having this talk off with an investor, right? The newer person raising capital, their thought process goes to, well, I'm going to talk about the gains they can make, the yield they can make, how much growth they can have. And I think that there are parts of the market cycle where that's good, but then there's parts of, I think, the current market cycle that it's not about the gains, it's more about the capital preservation. So kind of talk to us a little bit about what do you see when you're having that talk off? What's most important to talk about? If not the gains, what's the important part?
Yeah. It's funny that I just had a recent conversation with somebody, I can't remember who, but if you're familiar with the concept of bond laddering, where it's staggered, basically it's time and resources. So we were having that concept of the talk. And I was like, so if you take the stock market, and again, 6-7%, depending on which ones you read, I said, what's the purpose of that? If you hear, people are like, well, I just want to put my money and I just want to put it into something. I'm like, well, let's be strategic about it. Let's be tactical. What is it that you're really wanting to do? And that's how you shape that conversation. And so we took that concept of bond laddering and we just said, here, if you have it over here, where when the stock, just like, for instance, personally, hey, we're in the stock market. And the stock market, hey, it doesn't always go good and it doesn't always go up. So what you do, you have those ebbs and flows, I think is what they're called. And so one of the things I like about the notes is it is consistent. You can take it to the bed where you're not having to ride big waves and stress out and do all that other stuff. We're not saying only do one thing or the other, but it definitely, helps stabilize when a market goes crazy and does everything. So. Yeah,
absolutely. After a decade of massive growth, they've really amassed this wealth. They want to invest it knowing that they're going to be able to keep it, right? Obviously, the real estate market can't do this forever. The stock market can't do this forever. Like, there's some common sense here. And investors right now are very sensitive to the fact that, like, we've made a lot. Now, how do we secure that in a way that's going to allow us to keep it? And this becomes a really great conversation with investors because the perfect opportunity becomes notes. I wanted to jump into another question I saw from Glamour Property. What do I tell a doctor or a prospective investor if I'm asked how much experience I have? Because people tend to want to hear from the experienced person. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on that, and I'm happy to chime in as well, Ben.
You know what? It's funny. I love this question. It's a great question. When I started, and I made it more about here's what I can do. Here's what I all the I's, like here's what I can do for you. Here's how I can do this. When I changed the I's to here's what you can do, and here's what your numbers are going to be. What's funny is before when I said the I's, I was new to it, very little transaction history, and I got kicked back with that question. But the moment later on in life when there's triple digits there, I've not once had that question come to me when I made it. And the only word was switched to here's what you can do. Here's what you will get. Here's what you will. I've not been asked that question.
Interesting.
It's funny.
I find it also that, specifically for someone who's newer, your main objective should not be trying to pitch as many people as possible. Your main objective should be trying to position yourself as the subject matter expert in that field, right? You come in, you get some training, you become the knowledgeable force so that when they do have questions, they come to you. Then the second piece is consistency, right? We've talked about people who have meetup groups or they have Facebook groups, and they're always pushing out content. Hey, here's how note investing can help you. You can quickly establish yourself, even with a couple of months of experience. You can quickly establish yourself as someone who has this specialized knowledge. And if it's a right fit for you, then it's amazing how much faster that conversation can start to develop. But I would not get in your mind that you need to run around to doctors' offices and try to. That's not going to go well.
Don't just go like some people do doctor shopping, right?
Yeah,
in a bad way. Don't go pitch everybody. And Ben, just you tell this story, and every time you do, I laugh. And that's when your guys first got in with you, they were so used to the volatility, right? That they would call you and say, how are the notes doing today, right? How are the notes doing today? And talk about that and how you answered that question.
Yeah. So again, they had stock background. So it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And when they first bought a note, I shouldn't say there was a few of them when they first bought a note where they would call me, it's like the second or whatever. And it's like, hey, what's my money doing today? I was like, well, nothing. I mean, the payment came in yesterday, right? Or it could have been the 5th or 4th or wherever it was, but the payment just came in. And they're like, well, what's my money going to do? I'm like, nothing until next month. They only pay once a month. And so they were so used and conditioned to the rise and fall of the market where it was funny. It truly was funny where they would call me, like, what's my money doing? Like nothing till next month. And what's interesting is that after about 2 or 3 times of that conversation, they mellowed out in the sense of like, I really like the consistency. I like the stability. The stress. So it was great.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thing from what we refer to as the stock market refugee or the hedge fund refugee. Is there's this sense of urgency and panic of like, I need to know, I need to manage my money, and you're putting it in a vehicle, a note vehicle that's stabilizing things. And really, that's the whole point. Is, hey, you can keep the returns, but we can get rid of a lot of the headaches. And once they buy into that, they start to leave you alone. You don't get near as many phone calls, huh, Ben?
Well, not those kind of calls. Usually then it's like suddenly they have more money.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing, Ben, right? And you should say, you should talk about that. They're going to say, well, I've only got $50,000. And then magically, 4 months in, they go, this is going pretty good. I've got $400,000, right? We see that happen time and time again.
Oh yeah. If I tease them because that's what they say. It's always 10 grand or 20 grand, and that's all I have. I'm like, that's all you have, and well, maybe I can get to 12, or maybe I get to 30, and then 6 months later, suddenly 250 grand, 500 grand. I'm like, well, what happened to 15? That's a big jump in 6 months from 15. Like, well, I just wanted to see what was. So they do have more money.
And it's not selling them, Ben, right? You're not selling them on the investment. You're presenting the investment. And if they want in, they get in. And Ben, you've told me many times in our conversations how you've actually, if somebody was a little bit too, toxic, you would just fire them out of the group and pay them off.
Yeah. We have done that, and we will do that. I think the group now is great. I couldn't ask
for it locked in.
Yeah, a better group of guys or group of people. But yeah, there was a few where we had to strategically part ways, we'll say. And it was just because, we're not, it doesn't help a group to come in and start throwing weight around, and nobody really cares how much you know. What are we making, right? I mean, you could know everything. If you're not making any money, who cares? And so I just wasn't willing to. And then what's funny is Dr. Steve, who was the example that we showed, he was the one that was like, we're booting this guy. Because I made sure in the operating agreement that I had no powers to do that, because I wanted to give them all the control and them all the resources in order to do that, because I didn't want anybody coming to me, and I just didn't have time to hear the complaining. Right. I'm kind of past that. So
yeah, I love that. And I think what's really beautiful as we kind of wrap up NoteSchool TV after party here today is that it's okay to turn down an investor, right? You've got people who have 10 or 12 grand. And when you're brand new, you think there's this mindset of like, oh, I've got to be able to, like, I just need to get that going. And if it's somebody who's going to invest money and they need that cash flow to live on, that's not an investor, right? We're not, that's the wrong audience. And what comes with that 10 or 12 grand who they need that cash flow is nothing but phone calls and nothing but headaches. It's nothing against them. It's just they're not ready to take that next step. And so being selective is definitely not a problem. And it's better to wait, because if you give up the $12,000 to wait for the right guy, that right guy gives you 50, then he magically has 500, like Ben said. So
yeah.
So Brian, this is the example that we use of Ben using that private capital, Burnt Out Landlord Capital, to build his bank, right? And then next week, as you mentioned, we've got Miss Martha Speed, Eddie's better half, right? And she's going to talk about how she uses the same Burnt Out Landlord Capital to build legacy wealth for her new, for her family, right? All the way down to her new grandson, Levi, right?
That is it. That is it. And I'll kind of say that if you're looking for a way to not just build a legacy, right, but create unbelievable wealth, like really sustainable long-term wealth, you do not want to miss next week's NoteSchool TV. Having Mrs. Speed on is going to be an absolute treat, I promise you. So thanks everybody for sticking around. Thanks for hanging out with us in the after party. We really appreciate the comments. Definitely go and make sure if the notifications aren't on, turn them on so that you can engage with us a little bit more. We'll plan on seeing everyone next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on the other side.